Hello, my name is Danielle Brantley. I am a grant writing consultant and content writer that helps nonprofits and businesses secure funding and create engaging content to grow their business. This is my second YouTube video. Some of you may have watched the first YouTube video that was about candid and previously awarded grant applications. Just like you're learning grant writing, I'm learning YouTube, and it's an interesting process so far, all of the technical issues, but I'm here for it. It's interesting. Hopefully you were able to register for candidlearning.com and start to look at some of those resources that they have, and hopefully you were able to learn something. In this video, we are going to talk about the Freedom of Information Act and how you can use that to your advantage to help you win grants. We are also going to look at a sample grant on grants.gov as an example and walk through the process step by step of doing the research to see if we can find a successful grant that was previously awarded. And then we are going to walk through the process of submitting a Freedom of Information Act request online. So first, the Freedom of Information Act is a law that states that the public has a right to request public information from the government. Now, there are some restrictions and exemptions that are listed on the Freedom of Information Act website. So for this video, we're not going to focus on that, but for the purpose of grant writing and obtaining a previously awarded grant from the government, that should not be an issue because the exemptions that they have are more so along the lines of national security. So if you submit a Freedom of Information Act request online, if there happens to be an issue, like I said, I don't foresee that, they will communicate that to you and let you know. However, it should not be. But if you want to know more about those exemptions, maybe for another purpose other than grant writing, just for research purpose, you have another project, you can go to their website and see what those exemptions are. Now, we're going to go to the website. Let me share my screen. Okay, this is the Freedom of Information Act website. And they have information here where you can learn. We're going to go to before you request. So what you will find is that they want you to do your due diligence. Before you submit a request on this website, they want you to check the federal government agency website. So for the purpose of grant writing, that would be the government agency that is forecasting or announce the grant. And we're going to look at that in detail when we look at our example grant that we're going to go over. Now, if you look down here, they have research, and you'll see here they have selected agencies to start your request or to see an agency's contact information. Then they have all of the agencies listed here. So what you have to do, and it tells you right here, it says, before making a request, first see if the information is already publicly available. You can find a lot of useful information on individual agency websites. Okay, so that's what we are going to do because every federal government agency website has a different process. They have their own FOIA online process of submitting a request. So that's why they tell you first do your due diligence. Okay, this is grants.gov. And for those of you that don't know, I don't want to assume that everyone knows what grants.gov is. Grants.gov is the leading source for federal grants. This is the exhaustive list of federal government grants. So if you are looking for a grant opportunity, or sometimes they're called a funding opportunity, you go to grants.gov. You can also go to individual federal government agency websites. So for example, Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, Department of Labor. You can go to their website and they sometimes will have grants listed as well, of course, But even on those websites, they will redirect you to grants.gov because this is the exhaustive list. They also have some grant learning resources here. Now, in my opinion, if you saw the first video where we talked about Candid, some of the resources that Candid has, in my opinion, Candid is a better resource as far as the grant writing learning because it's more thorough. Okay, and now we are going to look at our example. Okay, so this is the grant opportunity, or sometimes it's called a funding opportunity. You see here, they call it the same thing. It's interchangeable. And it is titled Early Head Start Expansion and Early Head Start Child Care Partnership Grants from the Department of Health and Human Services. So that is the agency. And then the division is Administration for Children and Families. Okay, so I just want to point out the eligibility part because there's a lot of myths, I believe, when it comes to grant writing, not opportunities, but funding opportunities about who is eligible and who is not. So a lot of people I've heard say, and they probably get this from what they've heard other people say or just information that's out there, that small businesses cannot get federal grants. And that's not true. It depends on the funding opportunity. And so my advice to you is always look at the eligibility requirements for a grant opportunity, because that's where you find that information out. And I can say from experience, I have seen several grant opportunities for small businesses that were federal grants. So that is not true. You just have to take it by case basis and just do your research. And you see here, I'm not going to read all of these, but it says nonprofits that do not have a 501c3 status, nonprofits that have a 501c3 status, small businesses, state governments, for-profit organizations other than small businesses. So it tells you everyone that is eligible, and clearly small businesses are eligible. And I have seen other grants that were available for small businesses. Okay, so we are going to go to the Administration for Children and Families website. Okay, so it says select an office. And here we go, Office of Head Start. Okay, and I am going to search for FOIA first. Okay, and so we get a message that says the page you are looking for may now be in the ACF archive. So we'll click there. Okay, so it says the Administration for Children and Families archive contains resources selected for long-term preservation to capture historical information from the website for reference and record-keeping purposes. So if they have the grant, it should be here. So I'm just going to go back to our example, and I'm going to just copy and paste it into the search. To see. Okay, so we get a message that says, you are viewing content from the ACF archives that is no longer current, but remains on our site for reference and record-keeping purposes. Okay, so that means that we are probably going to have to do a Freedom of Information Act request online. Okay, so if we scroll down, they have an article about that grant. It says early Head Start expansion and childcare partnerships will increase early learning opportunities. And this is from 2014. But that is not the grant application. That is not the proposal. And if you saw the first video where we were on Candid, you saw an example of what a proposal looks like. So these are actually not proposals. This is another article about the applications are under review. Okay, and then if we look on the side, we can actually even narrow our search down even more. I'm gonna click grants and funding just to do our due diligence. Okay, so now so they have funding opportunity announcement Q&A. That's not what we're looking for. They have grantees. So what this is, when it says grantees, of course, that's the organizations that were awarded the grant. So that's only going to tell us who they are, their names probably. And sometimes they may include a project abstract or a project proposal. And see here, grants awarded. See, just like I said, abstracts. So that's not the full grant that they have. Okay, so we are going to have to go back and submit a request. Okay, so it tells us again what the Freedom of Information Act is. And if we go down, it tells us submit a FOI request online. So this is the process. So first they want you to check ACF's reading room, create an account, and then submit the request. So we'll check the reading room. Just to do our due diligence again. And it's pretty much the same thing. So they're saying that it's the ACF archives. So we already checked that the reading room and the archives is the same thing. And they don't have it. Okay. So before we go to submit a request, I do want to show you frequently requested records. Just to show you that when you go to federal government agency websites, sometimes they will have successful grant applications on their website. That's a common practice. However, they may not have the specific one that you're looking for. So that's why they said just do your due diligence. And if you look here, they have frequently requested records, and you see Office of Head Start is here, but it says grants, Head Start grantee monitoring report. So that's not actually the grant applications. And then here they have some sample grants, but they don't have one that we are looking for. And I'll just click on one to just show you another example. And you see it's 80 pages. Federal government grants are no joke. So just wanted to show you that. I'm not gonna look through all of it, but just show you some budgets. Application for federal assistance. Okay, and so on. So we're not going to look at that. Just wanted to show you, for those that maybe have never actually seen a federal government grant application, it's different. It is different than foundations and corporations, more complex. Okay, so now we can go back. Okay. Oh, I can't go back that way. Okay, here we go. So when you go to submit a request, you are going to have to create an account. So you would just register here. And I actually have already created an account for the purpose of learning for this video. And it tells you again the directions. Again, they emphasize that you need to do your due diligence and check the website first. And we did do our due diligence. We really did look. We looked in the reading room. And then we also, well, the reading room and the archives, we checked that. Now, I'm gonna go to sign in. And hit submit requests. Okay, and so they already have the office is selected, FOIA office, Administration for Children and Families, Health and Human Services. So we know that we are for sure in the right place, because remember, I'm gonna go back to our grant. That's exactly what we are looking for. So we know that you're submitting it in the right place. Okay, let me exit out of these. Okay, there we go. The request type is FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. The category is going to be educational, but I'll show you the other categories they have available. They have commercial, news media, congressional, general public, and nonprofit advocacy. The reason why I selected educational for you is because it is educational. You're requesting it to learn for educational purposes. Okay, we go down to the request information. This is very important, so I'm going to read this. So one of the reasons why they tell you to do your due diligence is because you want to be as specific as possible in your request. And we're going to get to the next part of the important reason why you should do that is the fee information. Okay, so it says, although you do not have to give a document's title, you should identify the documents that you want as specifically as possible to increase the likelihood that the agency will be able to locate them. Any facts you can furnish about the time, authors, events, subjects, and other details of the documents will be helpful to the agency in deciding where to search and in determining which records respond to your request, saving you and the government time and money. Please list as clearly as possible the name of the documents, the type of documents, and any other specifics you may have that will identify the documents you seek. So basically, one, being specific, that's going to help you get what you requested quicker. And then two, the less time they have to spend, the less money you will be charged. Now we're going to get on the money part of it in a second. I know some people might be like, money, but yes, so we'll talk about that part. Now for the dates, if we don't have a specific date because we know that when we search, we could not find, but we did see that they mentioned in 2014, this grant opportunity. So I am going to go back here and just copy. For the dates, I'm going to put January 2014 to December 2014. Okay, and then we are going to say, I am requesting a copy of one of the grants. Okay. Scroll down and then we look at fee information. So for the fee information, one thing that you have to know, they already have it default to $25. And what they're, I'm not going to read all of this, but basically the reason why is because if you have a request that ends up costing more than $25, then they will reach out to you to see if you are willing to pay more. However, they don't necessarily anticipate the request to be more than $25. So that's why I was saying before, it's important that you make sure your request is as specific as possible so that that way you can get exactly what you're asking for and then not cause them to do a bunch of extra research. And then the more research they do, then the more you have to pay. So the default is 25. And then they have information down here about a fee waiver request. And I would not do this because it tells you here to evaluate whether the statutory standing authorizing a fee waiver or reduction has been met. We will need additional information upon which to base our determination. If you would like to request a fee waiver, please provide additional information. Now, from my research, I know that I've seen that they pretty much said that the only way that you can really necessarily justify a fee waiver if it's for like the information of the public good. So not necessarily like I can't afford it. That's not a legit reason. So that's why I said I wouldn't do that, and because that can slow down your request. And you also have the option to check willing to pay all fees. So that means that, even if it's over 25, they can just go ahead. So it's really up to you. Before this, just leave it at 25. And then they have an option to expedite. You have to have a reason, and it tells you here there has to be an imminent threat to the life or physical safety of an individual, or information, like I said before, concerning the public or alleged federal government activity. So it has to be something where it's a rush because it's for the public good. Basically, it's an emergency. And then that's it. Then you hit submit. This is just for learning, training purposes, so we're not actually going to submit it. And just to reemphasize the value of this, in the first video, when we looked at the Candid website and we looked at the previously awarded grant samples and examples, those were different examples. But when it comes to making a Freedom of Information Act request, it's very specific, as you see. So you're applying for a grant, and then you're able to look at the same exact grant, the same exact government agency, the same funder that's issuing that grant. And it was a successful grant application. There's so much value in that, because two of the most important, I would say, tips for beginners in grant writing and just overall is to know that it's important, one, with grant writing, to do your research. And I've said that before, shared that before. And when I say do your research, I mean do your research as far as the funder, your alignment with the funder, as far as your mission, their funding areas. And also to know, number two, what it is that they are looking for, to understand that. What is it that they're looking for? Because from funder to funder, it can be different. So that's why it's and valuable information. Now, if you are able to find the grant on the federal government agency website, then that's great. That means that you won't have to go through this process. But I can tell you it's highly unlikely that you would necessarily be able to find the exact grant. It is a possibility, but it's highly unlikely. But again, if you don't have to go through this process, you could use just a sample grant. Like you saw on the website, they had examples of grants. You could use those just like with Candid. However, like I said, if you want to be more specific and look at the same exact grant that you're applying for, it's a great strategy for winning grants. Tried and true.